Okay, so today let's talk rupture, Achilles rupture or partial rupture tear. You might be able to see with my crutches out of shot. This is a topic that's going to be of increasing interest to me over the next year because I've got a Achilles rupture. I am on day number 15 now, and I wanted to come back and record this video because I think there's lots of important things to know. Being a sportsman myself, I'm actually surprised with the lack of knowledge around this particular injury I have, and getting it diagnosed and treated very quickly is quite important. So, if you find this video and you think you might have ruptured your Achilles, the best piece of advice I can give you is not to self-diagnose it out. Just go to either A&E or a physio, as you need to kind of get this treated for the best course of action within the first 48 hours. I'll go into why in this video a little bit later. But just get yourself somewhere where you can get it assessed and your foot essentially into a cast if it is ruptured or partially ruptured. Now, my injury took place on a badminton court. I am historically a squash player and knew about ruptures but had never seen one and never felt one, so I actually didn't know what to do next. I didn't know I had one, but the common thing that most people say, and exactly what happened to me, was on a badminton court, I felt like someone kicked me in the back of the leg. I wasn't running, I wasn't sprinting, I'm a very active person, and there tends to be two categories of people that get injured, they say, but it seems like virtually everyone's at risk, which is either your weekend warrior or your performance athlete. There's people like Kevin Durant, David Beckham, Kobe Bryant. Basketball seems to be a place where it happens a lot, in football, squash, badminton, all explosive sports. So I was going for really casually to get a shot, and I will record a separate video of my complete thoughts around why it happened. But at this moment in time, that's really not important. The important is getting the right treatment as soon as possible. So I actually felt like someone kicked me in the back of the leg. So I felt this thing. I didn't want to land on that foot. So out of instinct, not planned, I started falling effectively while I was running. While I was falling, I was looking behind me to see who'd kicked me. There was no one there, so my brain, this is all happening in fractions of seconds, which I think is quite interesting. Started looking for a ball because I was playing in a hall, quite a big hall, and even though I was playing badminton, looking for a ball that might have hit me in the back of the leg, and I couldn't see a ball. By that time, I'd hit the floor, and by the time I'd hit the floor, I'd realised there was no one else involved in the injury. I didn't know it was a rupture, but I did think it was the Achilles, but it wasn't that painful. And I think that's an important point to note here is that it might not be super painful. Mine wasn't, and because of that, I didn't think it was a rupture, and I didn't take it as seriously as I should have. I was resting, but I did try to walk back to my car. I ended up getting dropped home, walking into my house, having a shower, all things that ideally I wouldn't have done. But even the professional athletes and basketball players walk off court. So if you've done the same as me, I wouldn't stress about it too much. Again, it's more about looking forward at this point. So it's really important within 48 hours to get your foot in a cast, and the sooner the better. I managed to go to A&E on the night of the injury. So as I said, I didn't take it very seriously. I went home, did what I needed to do, rested it, had a shower, and then I did a bit of Googling around the injury. And the really unfortunate thing is that on the way home in the car, when my friend was dropping me, I Googled, felt like I was kicked in the calf. And the first result that came up on Google was that I had potentially a calf tear. And a calf tear is probably better news, maybe, I don't know enough about it, but probably, than an Achilles tear, because the calf is a muscle. It's a soft tissue that's supplied more generously with blood vessels, and it will recover more easily. It's similar with bone. Fractures will actually heal quicker than a tendon, because the tendon tends to have, especially the Achilles tendon, kind of fewer capillaries and less blood flow than these other areas. So that's one thing to note in terms of recovery time. Achilles tendon will take longer than most things in the lower leg, like a broken bone and a calf injury, which was a surprise to me. Anyways, the first result was that Google told me was that it might be a calf injury, and I thought I could just rest it. I went home and I thankfully did a little bit more Googling and went onto YouTube and found a test to see if it was an Achilles rupture. And I did the test because the video that I found, which I'm going to link, so please go and watch it, emphasized how important it was to get treatment in the first 48 hours for a good outcome after this injury. I'm going to record another video from my week 1 vlog post injury. If you're post 48 hours, there's other options. It's just the case of if you tend to get this treated in the first 48 hours, it's obviously better and you have more choices in terms of maybe not doing surgery or going down the conservative route. Again, it will all depend on your age and the medical professional you get advice from. So the test that I did at home was to try and test my Achilles connection. So I read the test, which I think it's called the Thomson test, but don't quote me. And effectively, I couldn't do it by myself. So what I did was I took my right leg, which is my non-injured leg. I was laying on a bed, and I was trying to relax this calf muscle. So in a really relaxed state of this calf muscle, I was just trying to pinch it. And if you can kind of see on camera, when I pinch this muscle, the foot is plantar flexing. So when we contract this calf muscle, if it's attached to the Achilles tendon, everything's working and the foot is pointing itself down. So I did that to get an indication of what it looks like on a foot that's not injured, and then, forgive the colour of my cast, I let the nurse pick the pink, although I do quite like pink. On my left foot, I did the same thing when the calf was relaxed, and there was just like no movement, no plantar flexing. The next thing was, I was lucky I had my mum in the house, so I did the Thomson test, which is lying face down on a bed with your feet just hanging off the back of it. The first thing is to do a visual test. So if there's tension, let's say that's my calf and Achilles, and that's the front of my body, and I'm lying on a bed here. If there's tension in the Achilles and the calf, a small amount, your foot is normally kind of just pointing a little bit down, right? So it's that way. If this gets totally disconnected, then your foot is like at a total right angle. So when there's a little bit of tension, as you can imagine, if there's a little string here attached to a calf muscle and there's tension in it, it's going to bring it up, but you're not fully kind of at this angle with your foot. With the break, let's say in the cord, then the foot is just completely pointing down at the floor. So go have a look at the Thomson test if you can do the visual check to see, and then secondly the same thing. So have someone activate your calf by pinching it quite hard. Well, actually not hard. I don't know if that'll make the injury worse on your injured leg, but do the same pressure to see on your good leg what it looks like, and then on your bad leg to see if there's any activation. If there's no kind of point, if your foot is kind of like that and there's no further extension of it, and that means like kind of a more further pointing of it, then yeah, it's showing that there's something there, either a partial tear or a tear. I think those are the important points. So do a bit of testing, try and get there within 48 hours. That's pretty much it. My experience at the hospital was waiting in A&E, getting my foot once it was assessed as a partial tear, and just if they're not sure, then the recommendation is to get your foot into a cast. This is from a top UK surgeon that I was listening to on a podcast, because you want to have it completely ruled out by a scan, or by a doctor who says it's 100% not that confidently, I guess. But if you can't be so confident that it's not that, then just get your foot in a cast as a precautionary measure till you get an Achilles rupture or tear ruled out, because that first 48 hours is so important for recovery. And the reason for that, if you're interested, is the fact that when this Achilles tendon, let's say it's here, ruptures, the tendon splits apart or partially splits apart. As part of that, you may not see it because it's below the skin and quite thin, but blood will immediately rush to the area and probably get inflamed. It might swell, mine didn't swell too much, but there'll be blood around the split, and that blood will start to congeal, solidify over 48 hours. Once that blood congeals and solidifies, it becomes scar tissue, and then the recovery process of kind of building the new tendon happens within that scar tissue. Now, if that's starting to dry after 48 hours, it's obviously drying in a certain position, and you want to dry that kind of in the position where the tendon is closest together. That's going to be around sort of this mark. It'll obviously be even closer if you pointed your foot as much as you could, but you don't want it to heal in an immobilized position, fully in that position, because you might lose the ability then in the future to flex. So you want it around 30%. You don't want it to be fully flexed. That might give you another issue. So I've gone with around 30% when you 30 degrees, sorry, when you put it into a cast. So do that. They will give you crutches. I am going to vlog separately about my post diagnosis experience. I think there's so many things that get missed as part of the NHS and generally just in terms of information. So I'm going to try and cover that in my whole vlog series, which is going to be pretty long as I go through recovery. I think it's useful that I am on week 2 now, day 15, when I'm starting to record this series, because I can kind of pick and choose stuff that I've learned, and there's a lot of things I learned in week 2 that would benefit week 1, which I'll obviously put into my vlog. So yeah, please continue watching and look out for other recommendations I put in the notes for things that were useful to me, and make sure you try and get more informed and stay connected to kind of optimistic, positive routes forward, I think is the best way to put it. Anyways, for now, get down to getting your foot in a cast, and yeah, catch you in the next video.